am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Cheryl Taylor. She is the president and COO of ERA Key Realty. In this episode, we discussed how the example of hard work in her family led her to create success in this organization that she has today, and the importance of getting present in order to create a better experience for those around you. I hope that you enjoy this episode. So many great stories that Cheryl is sharing with us about creating a positive environment and letting people know that they are appreciated. If you find that there are great lessons that you want to share with people that you know or other leaders in your industry, please subscribe, share this episode so more people can learn from the stories of Cheryl. I'm looking forward to this interview that you're about to hear. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. And today I'm with Cheryl Taylor from ERA Realty. And Cheryl, you want to just start off and give our audience a little background on yourself?
So it depends on how far background you want, but
just current so far. What do you do today? Yeah.
Current background. Today, I oversee a company that has 15 offices and about 375 real estate professionals. I have several managers that work to help us guide those agents and guide those professionals through their career and to help them when they have questions and problems. We are a very open door company. We're part of the Hunt Company of Families in Buffalo, New York. And one of the things that happened in the past 5 years is my husband and I used to own this company and run it. And then we sold our company to Hunt. And so we did choose Hunt because they were very similar to our culture and that we have a very family-oriented culture, kind of an open door company. And everybody knows they can call any of the leadership in the company when they have a problem, question, or need help. And so I'm very proud of everybody who works under this umbrella. They are amazing people. They really do a great job at keeping themselves sharp and in tune with what's going on in the industry. They're very professional. I get a lot of compliments from attorneys, from lenders, from all kinds of cooperating agents saying how wonderful a lot of our team is. So I'm really honored to be able to lead this team. So they're just a great group. And I am happy to be able to say that every day I wake up and I'm still glad to go to work. I'm still really excited to go to my job and my career and have fun with what I do. So
that's the best thing you can say. So it's always good that we find our purpose in life and passion in the work we do. And so we're going to start off to go backwards and really learn about your story so that we can see how you found that in your life. So where did you grow up and what did your parents do?
I grew up in West Millbury, Massachusetts. My dad was a school teacher and my mom she worked in an electronics company, but really did more stay-at-home mom stuff for a while and then went back into the workforce later on until she had some pain and some knee issues and things and ended up on disability. But so we had a very nice childhood. When I was young, my two sisters and we had loving parents who were really great. My dad was probably my biggest mentor or my first mentor. He was a very can-do, positive guy. Although when you become an adult, you find out what your parents' flaws are too. So, exactly. I won't share those, but God bless him. He's passed a few years ago, and so I do miss him. But he was always great at encouraging all three of us to be who we felt we wanted to be, to not let things hold us back. It was, during the time when women were being more empowered and he had a very firm belief that women were equals and that they could do what they needed to do and what they wanted to do. So he was very good at that. my parents unfortunately divorced when I was 13, and some rough spots there. And we moved with my mom to the town where they were from, Milford, Mass. And I went to school there for a few years, and then ended up going back to Millbury where my dad was teaching, and graduated a year early from high school, and just kind of put the junior senior year together. And I was not a big fan of high school. It was not my thing.
I get it. So why do you think your dad was such a proponent of women? Like, what created that for him?
Well, I'm sure part of that was my grandmother, my Nana Mella, my grandmother Camilla Wright, was an Italian. Her parents came over, from Italy, and she was we would call her, I think she's a saint. She's probably up there looking down on us. She lost her husband when my dad was 10, and she raised the 4 children on her own for many, many, many years. She was a loving, nurturing, wonderful Italian grandmother. So she fed us all. She would do anything for us before herself. She was self-sacrificing, which I have probably to an extent that's probably not healthy, which I have probably taken a little bit on from her of that. So it's been, I am often guilty of, at my own expense, doing things when I should take care of myself first. So I'm vying for sainthood with her or something. I don't know.
So how did she do that? So that's interesting. As an immigrant, it's a struggle anyway. So was she working and raising?
She did. She worked full time. She worked for the welfare department in Milford, until she was older. And then when she, was able to, she'd take them on vacations down the Cape, and we all went down the Cape together for many years, did our summer vacations down there. She was an excellent cook. And so she always tried to fill your heart with food. So, everywhere you went, every time you went to her house, she would be feeding you, and here, eat this. And she'd sell it like it was, like it was a commodity on the market. She'd describe it. There'd be adjectives that you couldn't believe she would use to describe it and make you sniff it. And
that's awesome. And I love Italian food, so I can't even imagine how good that was. So with her being an immigrant and raising the kids on her own, 4 kids, that sounds like, so were they taking care of themselves a lot of the times, or how did that work if she was there?
I'm not sure what year she went to work, but I got the impression that might have been a little bit when they were a little bit older. So I don't think it happened when they were young, but my dad was 10. 2 of his sisters were older. One of his brothers was a little younger. So I think they were more, and then the sisters being older would also help out. Both of his sisters became nuns, went into the convent.
Wow.
Yep. My grandmother was very religious too, so both became nuns. And then my uncle, my father's younger brother, became an attorney. So they were all very successful in different ways. My aunt, the oldest aunt, was a zoologist at Our Lady of the Elms College. So she was a great inspiration as well, and very, very intelligent.
So how did that pathway to becoming nuns happen in the family?
I would guess because my grandmother was so religious, they were probably at church almost every day.
Okay.
We went to a Catholic school. She was a very devout Catholic. And so she probably inspired that in them.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's so much there. That's such a different.
Yeah, that's why I said we could spend hours. If you wanted to. One of the younger aunt ended up leaving the convent.
Okay.
And she is actually still alive, unfortunately, with Alzheimer's, though. But she is my charge at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So how did that affect you, having aunts? So it'd be your aunts that were nuns, and being so involved in the church. Like, what was that like growing up? Did you think you were going to become a nun?
No, I never thought I was going to become a nun. No, not even close. I mean, I was probably pretty religious most of my childhood, but I was exploring different religions. I went to the Catholic Church a lot, but also kind of explored the Protestant church. And I still to this day am a bit religious. I love tradition, and I love ritual, and I love, and I'm a pretty faithful person. So
right.
I'm not anywhere near as good as my grandmother was at church and stuff.
So with that, so that's kind of an interesting background for your dad, seeing his sisters kind of take on a career life, not necessarily a family life, right? I don't know if the younger sister ended up having kids, but
no, neither one. Nope.
Yeah. So, and then seeing his mom working, I think that has such a big effect for men to see a, different
I think it did,
especially in that time.
I think he was protective of her too when he was, when he was younger. I think he really wanted to protect her too. But she was also, because she was born in 1909 and lived a nice long life till 95. She was also very much, the men came first. She was very, very traditional with that. So we'd have, Sunday dinners, we'd sit down and we'd all get napkins, paper napkins. And my father would get the cloth towel because he got the mapina because he was a man and he got fed first and all this.
That's funny. So when you say he was your mentor, did he start talking to you? Because, I know for myself, when I was younger, it was still really new for women to have careers. And, I was definitely influenced by my mom being a businesswoman and so forth. So what kind of, discussions, or maybe it was with your grandmother, did you have?
No, it was more with my father, I would say. I mean, because I never ever thought that there would be any option but to have a career, because of how he just talked about it like we do whatever we wanted to do, whatever business or career or whatever it was, we could just, we shouldn't let anybody hold us back. So it never was a thought that I wouldn't go into some sort of career or, do something productive with my life. So, the dynamics changed a little bit when they got divorced. It was a tough time for my dad. He was a family guy and he really loved his family and he didn't want to be away from his kids. And so he had a really tough time. And I almost kind of became pseudo counselor there a little bit at the age of 13. And and he had a little bit of a tough life after that. And so in the last 15 years before he died, I tried to do as much as I could to be there for him and support him. And I put him into a house and stuff like that. Just did a lot for him that I could when I could. So, and really spent a couple of really wonderful days with him shortly before he passed away. And it was a big surprise when he passed. So he used to drive my sisters and I a little crazy as he got older. And so one time he told us all, "Oh, I think I'll live I don't think I'm going to live more than another few years." And we were like, "Oh, Dad, stop. You're fine. You're fine." And then another time, 2 weeks later, he said, I think I'm going to live another 8 or 9 or 10 years. And my sisters and I were like, "Oh no." But then when he passed, we wished it was 8 or 9 years. So
I know.
Always appreciate what you have when you have it. Right.
So did you have your own hobbies when you were younger? Or?
I was very much an introvert when I was younger, I would say. I loved music. I played the flute. I loved band. I loved chorus. I loved to sing. I did a lot of great classes that I enjoyed, math and science and English. History was not my big thing. I took them and I passed them, but I've always been very good about memorizing things and then out they go out of my brain after the test. So, but so yeah, I was a little bit to myself as a child. I mean, my dad always said I was a young adult at 13 or 12 or 10 because I used to go on my own little walks in the woods. I had friends I played with too. We lived near a farm and we had a lot of friend time too, but and a best friend named Sally down the road that my sister and I were best friends with. So, but I really enjoyed my quiet time too. So I would go off and, sit on a rock and sing a song or explore or walk through we had a graveyard right behind us. So I'd walk through the graveyard and look at all the tombstones and talk to people.
Visit.
So
yeah. So
and it's funny because now all I do is talk to people all day long.
I was gonna say, yeah. So what is it that shifted you from?
It really hasn't. Really, when it boils down to things, I have a limit. of how much people time I can do. And then I have to go do alone time. So, so I really do recharge by being, on my own, contemplating things, reading things, writing things down. I really enjoy my quiet time. I do a miracle morning every morning for about 30, 45 minutes. That's my time to get grounded before I leave and enter chaos. So I don't touch email. I don't touch any of that stuff.
What is a miracle morning?
So Hal Elrod wrote a book, The Miracle Morning, and it was based on interviewing many successful people. And one of the things he found in common was all of them had a very distinct time cut out in the morning to kind of get their heads wrapped around things. And so it's based on what's called savers. So it's silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. And so every morning, I don't do all of those every morning, but as my exercise gets better done later in the day, but I do sit and read a couple of different journals. I write in a small journal that he has that I like because I could write for days if I keep writing. So he gives you just this little small chunk of space to write in, which is good for me. And then I just, I sit upstairs. We have a nice little place to sit with looking at the water where I live. And I just do my thing for 30 to 45 minutes with my tea every morning. And it's really helpful. So
how long have you been doing that?
Probably 8 or 10 years, maybe 7. I don't know, somewhere between 7 and 10 years.
Yeah. So how do you take that into your day?
I typically don't look at my email or anything else until I get into the office. I'll make calls on my way up to the office, or call clients or whatever I need to do. But it's just really a kind of a sacred time for me to be quiet. And then sometimes at the end of the day, when I go home, I tell my husband to shut the TV off or put his headphones on because I need quiet again by then.
Yeah. And I think I just wanted to emphasize that because I think a lot of real estate agents would say, there's no time for that. You have to respond to things right away. And, in that kind of, in any kind of sales job. And so, a lot of times we put that pressure on ourselves, but that's not actually someone else's expectations. So maybe you can address that of how you're still able to accomplish what you can accomplish.
I'd be fooling you if I said I didn't respond pretty quickly to a lot of my clients because I'm really, customer service is what makes or breaks it. So whether it's one of my sales professionals, calling me or texting me, or a client calling or texting me, I am pretty much on top of it pretty quickly, except at 7:00 in the morning, because it's 45 minutes that I want to myself. So, a lot of my clients, I'll tell them I just say I'm not a morning person because I'm up till midnight a lot. And so, so most people don't text me that early anyhow, but I'd say the rest of the time I'm all over text and calls and stuff.
Well, and I think that's really time blocking, right? Of like knowing when you are going to be on and when you're off, and then communicating those expectations to people so that they know you're not ignoring them, right? Like,
for sure.
So that's really important. So let's go back. So how did you find the interest what did you go to college and what
well, let me just, I haven't given fair shake to my mom and her family. So my mom's family was also a wonderful family, and my grandpa Carol and my Nana Carol were just wonderful. They'd take us on weekends, and I had a lot of cousins on that side of the family. So, cause they were not nuns. And so they were wonderful too, to be with. And so I had a lot of great, love around me growing up. I even saw modeled, like a couple of my aunts and uncles on that side of the family had been in marriages that didn't work out and they divorced, and my grandparents on that side were very good about, they still wanted the ex-wife to come or the ex-husband to come to dinner, and everybody just, was good with one another. That's even really nice. Working through that. And so they set a lot of great examples for us, both of my sets of grandparents. Well, my grandma and my other Nana and Papa were all great about setting great they were great role models. So great examples. When my parents split up and I moved to Milford, and then I decided to move back to Millbury to be with my dad and graduate more quickly than if I stayed in Milford. I was supposed to go to college. So here's where the hairy scary part comes in. I was supposed to go to college. I was going to go for free to Our Lady of the Elms in Chicopee, where my zoologist aunt worked. Unfortunately, I found men and had a child really young. So I did not end up going to college right away. I had my son, Brew, who's an amazing young man. And I was a single mom for a while. Well, actually, that's not true. I did get married very quickly and got divorced very quickly.
Yeah.
But then was a single mom for many, many years. And that, that made me a pretty strong person as well. But I felt like I had a foundation. You don't really want to know. I was 17 when I had my son.
Yeah.
Well, I had just graduated.
That's a lot of growing up fast,
Yeah.
I
was ready. I was ready. I didn't feel like I missed anything. I did a little bit of crazy stuff that kids do when I was 15, 16, and that was enough experimenting. I was okay. Mm-hmm. And he was such a cute little baby, and he was a sweetheart. So I had a wonderful time. I did have friends, in class that got pregnant about the same time, and they were really angry after they had children. They were not happy. Yeah, they felt like they lost something, and they were stuck. And I just felt like, hey, this is what you got yourself into. This,
right?
You can have to deal with it now.
Yeah.
So I did. So it's fine. I enjoyed it.
Did you have help from your family, or how did you?
So at first, because I was married for a short period of time, we, made a go of that. That didn't work out. And so I took a look at what I needed to do. I explored whether I should go on welfare. That did not look like a really viable option for me. I mean, we never had a lot of money, but I didn't really want to be, stuck without a car and stuck in a house and dependent on the system. And so I said, I got to figure something out. So I found a private daycare provider who was a wonderful woman. She was really great with my son, and she had a couple other kids she took care of. And I got a job and I went to work and paid the rent.
What was the job?
I worked as a laborer they created sheets of different types of material for electronics and for other types of industry. So that was in Millbury. I worked there for a few years. Is
that what your mom did?
No, not at all. Okay. Just something I found and went into. And then I ended up a few years after that getting a job in Hopkinton at an electronics company called Electronic Designs Incorporated, and worked there and had a really great mentor there. And I, for the life of me, cannot remember this gentleman's last name, but his first name was Jeff. And he was I have a Jeff Bruce thing in my life you'll hear about shortly.
Okay.
So he was great. He was just really, he was a great mentor. I worked in the electronics on the floor for a little while, and then in a microelectronics room where we would make substrates and individual chips. And then I ended up being promoted to the work coordinator and then to the supervisor of the department. And I did that for a while, and I loved having a little team under me, and I really enjoyed the people, and I like to, build camaraderie and excitement and motivation. And it was just fun, having a little team. It was really a nice time. And a lot of them were older women. So it was kind of funny. They were, they would laugh. They're like, you're a little girl, or you're, telling us what to do. But they were great. They would do anything for me. They were wonderful. So
what made him a mentor?
He was, when I was going up from laborer to work coordinator and supervisor, he was really great about giving advice. He was always in my corner. He really backed me up a lot. And I don't have as many specific memories about him, just that I really respected him, and he was a nice guy. And I'm sure I learned some specific things that I, do not remember.
Right. So then what was your next step from there?
Well, they ended up having some shifts in what they were going to do and what they were providing, and they decided to outsource their microelectronics. So it was either I would I wouldn't have a job, or I would go to a different department. I ended up going to the quality control department, which there was another great guy I worked with there. He was an odd guy, but he was a sweetheart, older guy. And I did that for a while. And then I ended up moving into marketing, which I hated. And so just like being an introvert, now I do marketing a lot.
Yeah.
But marketing at that firm was, you wrote there was a lot of specs. You had to review specs. You had to, see if the customers' needs were going to be a fit to our products. So it was not as exciting as some of the stuff I do now. So, So I did that. And then I actually met my next husband there. His name was Jeff.
Okay.
And he and I, worked there for a while and got to know each other. And I had some other great friends there. And then when we decided we were going to get together, and I got pregnant, I had my daughter Jessica. I wanted a few extra months off from I had a very tough pregnancy with Jess. I had placenta previa and was in bed from my 4th month till my 9th month. And then, she was such a blessing to have finally and have her whole and safe. And I really felt I needed a couple more months at home with her. And the company kind of wasn't crazy about having married people working at the same company. And so they were like, nope, you can't have your extra months. I'm like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
So I kind of just stayed home and took care of the kids for a little while, for a year, about a year. When Jess was 1 in August of 1990, I was out looking for a house. We were ready to kind of move up from where we were living. And so I was out with a realtor looking at homes, and her name was Beth, and she's no longer in real estate. She wasn't there much longer after I did that. But when we went out looking, we stopped at her office. She goes, I said, how do you like selling real estate? And she says, oh, I love it. It's a great career. You should talk to my boss. So I went in and talked to her boss, and it turned out that I actually knew him a little bit because both our sons went to the same school in Upton, Touchstone Community School. And so we ended up kind of chatting away. And of course, I didn't know back then that you could kind of get hired anywhere if you get your real estate license. I think you're special, like, oh, they want to hire me,
Right.
So it was kind of funny. And then I interviewed with his partner at the time, Pat Schraft, who's also gone from this earth, unfortunately. And just had a funny interview with him. He was a card. He was just a funny guy. And then I ended up saying, well, I think I'm gonna get my license. We didn't buy a house from her, but
but you got a job.
I got a job, well, a career. It's really no pay, so.
Right.
So I had asked, can I come in to the office, even though I don't have my license? Back then, it was much harder to go and, get your license timing wise. You'd go and take classes, either live or video classes that were monitored or proctored. And so you'd go take those classes. I took those for weeks. And then you went and took your test. I took my test in October, and I didn't have my license till November. So it was a long process back then. Now you take your class and you go and take your test, right away if you passed or failed and you have your license. But so during that, I worked in the office. I just volunteered my time and just wanted to hear what happened. And at that point, my mom was helping out a bit, so I could go in a few half days with my daughter. She was watching her, and I'd go in and just kind of hear what was going on. And it was a great way to get familiar and acclimated and know the terms and learn a little bit and hear the top agents, how they handled customers and clients. And back then, everyone was in the office. Nobody worked from home. Nobody had remote. There were we really didn't have our real estate was in a big, thick book. And you'd sit down with a customer in a conference room, and you'd go through the book and pick out what houses you were going to show. So there was no computer stuff back then. And that did change shortly into my career. Within a few years, we were on a DOS-based system where we had Remus MLS from the Boston MLS, and Worcester had a different MLS. And so we'd have to look in 2 different MLSs. But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. So it's definitely evolved over the last 32 years that I've been in real estate. So
how did you, because coming into real estate, and I've interviewed others of just like that beginning part, that's so hard. How did you stay positive that you were going to be successful in this? Because I think in any sales position, it's hard, but this particularly can be really hard to get over the hurdle of that beginning part.
So this sounds awfully conceited, and I don't mean it that way, but I didn't ever give myself any other thought except that I would succeed.
That's not conceited. That's
so
your visualization.
I don't know. I mean, that's how my parent, that's how my dad kind of coached me to be. And so there was never going to be an option that I wouldn't succeed. I knew I liked people already, and I knew I liked kind of leading people, which in some ways, when you're selling real estate, you're leading people to a good decision. And so you may not be leading them in a department or an organization, but you're leading people to a decision that works for them. And so I really enjoyed that consultant type space. I enjoyed the relationships I formed. My first sale that I made was in December of that year. And that next year, I think I sold 7 houses or something. And then the year after that, 14. And then I kept building up. And within about 4 or 5 years, I was selling about 50 houses a year, which was crazy back then because I had a, part-time gal that come in and help me do my mailings and things like that. And but then I started kind of like, okay, well, I've done this and I'm doing really good at this. So now what do I do next?
Right.
So I started seeing, coming from that corporate background, I started seeing some holes in the office where we were growing. We didn't have a lot of systems in place. We didn't have, policies or procedures. We didn't have training or coaching. And so we had a gentleman who was kind of serving as the office manager there a little bit. He was very helpful when I was first in my business, but I just kept seeing all these kind of holes from having a more repetitive process kind of thing to help people. So I started kind of just inflicting myself into that and creating solutions, and which wound me with a part-time position there, and then eventually grew into a full-time position managing. And then we merged with a couple other offices, and the head of the company, Bruce Taylor, who we'll get into that in a minute. Bruce's and Jeff's, as I mentioned. So we just we were a great team as far as work went, and we had a lot of synergy. And so Bruce and Mike and I just were a great little trio. Mike was the gentleman who did a lot of the office management at first when I was there. And the three of us just kind of really were a great team. We always had great discussions. We didn't always agree, trust me. We did not always agree.
Yeah.
But we always had great discussions. And so we really built the company from there. And Bruce was really savvy at what he was doing. And he actually got out of sales and focused just on growing the company. We had some great help from the ERA franchise. We had a great consultant that worked for them that helped Bruce kind of formulate a plan. And then we really went to work on it. And so we built the company fairly quickly. And then we did a very large merger with ERA John Nelson in 1998, I believe. And so we changed the name of the company. At that point, we were ERA Homeowners Advantage. We merged with ERA John Nelson. We created ERA Key from that. So, and then we ended up, building the company to 200 agents, and then 250 agents, and then 300 agents. And so it was a nice improvement, and it just kept, growing in a nice direction. Eventually, my husband Jeff and I kind of parted ways. We were not growing in the same direction, and he's a wonderful guy, and I still love him to this day. And I love his new wife. She, that was a little hard at first, but I really enjoy them very much now. And we, when Jeff and I split up, I helped him buy a new house, and and then when he started dating his wife Trish, I helped him sell his house, and then I helped them sell their house when they moved to Arizona. So we've had a really nice relationship, and they just moved back up this way, and I helped them buy a house up here. So, so we've had a nice time with that, but and we have a great relationship. And eventually Bruce and I ended up getting together because we spent so much time together in the company, and just really. I didn't realize that I was developing feelings for him, but I guess I was. So
wow.
He's a little older than I am. So we spent a lot of time, going to conferences together and things. We just had a great friendship, and that really blossomed into more. And we're still married, and he's Peach, and I told him he has to live to 100. So
there you go. Well, and that is so important to have that connection as a friendship, for to really have that bond together. So that's really
and
nice.
I think there's to an age where you really start to figure out a little more about what you're looking for in life and what you want and how you want it to be. And I will be the first person to say that I definitely made mistakes in my marriage to Jeff, and I'm sure he made mistakes. I thought it was all him, but now, hindsight's 2020, and I can see where I messed up too. And but I was still young, when you're 25, 26, 27, you're still young. You don't have it all figured out. I still don't have it all figured out, but it's a little better.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we all have a great relationship. The kids are great with it. And so I had been married to Jeff. My son's name was Bruce. My first husband was Bruce. That short marriage was Bruce. And then my third husband is Bruce, and my stepson is Jeff.
Oh, that is hilarious.
And then I run into all kinds of Bruces and Jeffs more than any one person could possibly have happened.
I think so.
So, but speaking of my stepson, who actually has he said he'd never go into this business with his father. And then when he got out of college, he decided maybe he'd try a little bit of something, and he did some recruiting for us. And then he did some more work for us, and he managed a branch, and I really kind of mentored him, which was a lot of fun. He's a bright guy, and he was soaking up everything that I could teach him. And he's got some talents that are beyond me. So he's a great recruiter. So he's just a really great guy. And so we as Bruce has decided to retire over the last few years after we sold the company, Jeff's kind of become my work partner. And so in some ways, he and I sometimes see things more on the same page than Bruce and I did. But in other ways, I had to kind of become Bruce a little more. Bruce is always a great idea person, and we called me the executioner. So, I would be the one who would think his idea through and then figure out how we would implement it. Mm-hmm. So I have had to learn to be a little bit more of an idea person now that Bruce is not doing this, and try to let others implement, which I need to continue to get better at. So
well, and I think it is really important to know where your strengths are and how to fill those gaps, and not try to be something you aren't. Like, appreciate those skills in other people, because that's how you grow a team, right? And
absolutely.
So you had said you were self-sacrificing. So where do you find that you do that, and how do you put boundaries around that?
I don't. I've got to figure that out. I jam-pack my calendar from start to end of the day. I volunteer for my church. I've been the church treasurer for 17, 18 years. I just, at this point, my mom and stepdad are getting older, so I'm trying to do what I can to help. My sister does a little more with that. I do more financially. She does more time-wise. So, and when my dad was sick and older, we both were doing a lot with him, and I've done a lot for him financially. So, I really just don't protect my own personal time well enough. Honestly, I need to get better at that. So I keep trying. I keep, every week is a new week. I make a plan, and then I don't stick to it.
At least you're halfway there, right?
Yeah.
Well, you've written a bunch of things down when I spoke at your group with the Business Balance Bliss. Was there anything you took away that you stuck with?
Probably not. No, I don't know. I mean, I've probably been better at protecting more of my morning times. That is one I'm good at protecting. The only days I don't typically do that is I watch my grandchildren on Wednesday morning for a few hours, who are adorable, and they're closer by than my other two little ones. We have 8 grandchildren between the two of us, but 4 of them are under the age of 6. So I'm trying to enjoy that age while I can, and while I'm able to have a little more flexibility in my schedule than I once had. And so I'm enjoying that. And so that's one morning I do not get any Miracle Morning in, because I go right from getting up at 6:30 to watching a 2 and a 4-year-old. And then I need a nap at 12 o'clock. So,
right, exactly.
but it's worth it. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, but I'm trying. One of the things we realized, Jeff and I realized a few years ago was, I was like, Jeff, we were both looking at each other saying, why are we like running ourselves ragged here?
Mm-hmm.
And then we realized it used to be Jeff at some point in time, Jeff did more with Bruce and I, and we were a trio. And now we only had two people. We've been running it on two people since Bruce retired. And so it had been like 3 years without a third person in place. And the market was crazy and things were busy. And so we kind of realized that it was time to look for a third leg to our stool. So we actually had somebody right under our nose. We started looking. I started reaching out to all the contacts I had through the ERA franchise system, through people I've met in the past, through the board of realtors. Just started reaching out saying, do you know of anybody who would be kind of have a lot of brokerage knowledge, multiple office knowledge, good people skills, good management skills. And so we had just done a merger with another company from ERA, a small company in Dorchester. And her name was Nadine Fallon, and her and her business partner, Jamie Iackoy, had decided to do this merger with us. And she'd been working with us for a few months, but it didn't even dawn on us. And then finally one day she said, I heard you're looking for a third person. I'd be honored if you'd consider just looking at my resume and, talking to me a little bit about it. So we did. And then as we got to know her more, it was perfect. I feel bad for Jeff though, because she is kind of a younger me, with curlier hair. And so she approaches things a lot very similarly to the way I do. And so I'm really enjoying that, because we're often on a very great little thing, but I feel bad for Jeff. It's always good to have different personalities. You shouldn't have we shouldn't have three of the same people. That would be bad. But for me to be able to let go of a few more things that I typically do and that Jeff really doesn't want to do, it's good to have somebody that I can now rely on to delegate a little bit more to. And so we're right now trying to fill a branch leader position in the Dorchester office so that Nadine can come and work more fully with us. Right now, she's kind of half in both positions. So that's going to be a nice, my goal with that is to protect my time a little better. Mm-hmm. After we can really, really embrace that fully. So,
yeah. And I think that's important when you see yourself stressed out or too many people around you stressed out, to pause and observe what's going wrong here. Why are we all stressed out? Why are people stressed out? What do we need to do to shift? Yeah. And to know where to delegate and be okay to release things so that you can free up that space. Yeah.
And we have an amazing leadership team at the branch leaders are just really great. They've been, we've had a couple of things happen where I've need some help on a few different areas, and they're just so willing to step in and help and, cover for each other. And it's just, they're an amazing group. So as are the agents. I mean, like I said, I'm always overwhelmed about how great this team is. So
that's awesome. It's always good.
Yeah.
So many great stories that you've shared. I'd like to end the conversation with some rapid fire questions, but you pick a category. And the category is family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Well, health is probably not my best one, so I shouldn't answer that one. Although I am pretty healthy, but
yeah.
Oh God, you pick, I don't care.
Well, no one usually does spiritual, and you have a lot of that in your background. So let's do that. You asked me to pick.
All right, I'll do it.
All right. Things or actions I don't have that I want.
Things or actions that I don't have that I want. I feel pretty blessed with things I have. I've been in places where I've had no money, and I've been fortunate to be blessed with a little more money at this stage of the game, having sold the company. But that you can't replace the relationships and the people and the love around you. You can't put a tag on that price wise. So, I think I want to make sure I always have a wonderful network of people around me, good friendships, making sure our family knows how much I love them, and making sure my kids are amazing human beings. Bruce's kids are amazing human beings. We feel really proud, about all of them. And so, that's I don't want for any more of that, but I don't ever want to be without it. So
Right.
That's probably number one. Great friendships, great family.
So things or actions I don't have that I don't want as far as your spirituality.
Right now, I used to go to church pretty regularly, and I don't have a regular, I have protected a 1 day off thing, which has been great. And I do try to, do a little bit of like, a little more on my miracle morning, a little more reflection. But I think what I don't have right now that I'd like to get back in is some sort of religious practice on Sunday, whether it's going to a church service or meditating or just something that's a little more grounding. When I went to church regularly, I always felt like Sunday was a great time to start fresh again, to, reflect inwardly and to love your family, your church family, and to be with that other family that was a little different dynamics, but to really be able to reflect about the past week, appreciate the people that you wanted to appreciate, in your heart, and ground yourself for the new week and what you might be able to do better, and also kind of acknowledge what you did wrong too, and figure out how you might do that better the next week. So I would like to go back to doing my Sunday a little more, a little more from a religious standpoint. So
yeah. And then things or actions that I do have that I don't want. So I want to get rid of.
Boy, that's a tough one. Oh, I want to I have a plan to get rid of my treasurer position next year at the church. Because I've been doing it for a long time, and it's time.
You need to create boundaries.
And we have a plan for that. So that would be I don't know if that's spiritual, but
well, it's part of
the church.
Yeah. Awesome. So anything that we haven't talked about or that you want people to kind of leave this conversation with before we end today?
I probably said it all already, pretty much. I mean, I always have more to say, but I think just this is a great time of year to reflect on, who's important in your life and why, and make sure they know. I guess, as you age, you realize you're not going to have time to say everything and do everything, and you're gonna someday you're not going to be here. So that's a tough one to struggle with sometimes. So just, appreciating what you do have and being as positive as you can, and giving people a kind word, and trying to make sure, because even I, especially I, sometimes I'm running so fast that, I don't acknowledge what somebody's done or let them know how much I appreciate them, because I'm running, trying to get something done, and I'm very task oriented. So I guess the main thing is to try to be positive, be a positive influence in other people's lives, and appreciate everyone around you. So it's a great time to, dwell on that a little.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story. There's so many great lessons I think people can take away from this today.
We could do an after hours one that's not recorded where I can tell you more.
Yeah, exactly. There's some good ones in there, I'm sure.
A lot of the people around me know them all already anyways.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty open book. So
awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on.
All right. Thank you, Amy. It was a pleasure having you at our event, and great to see you again.
Great to see you.
Thanks.
And now for my mindful moments from my interview with Cheryl. And I just love this interview because Cheryl definitely had her own path coming into success. And I think it's important for anyone to realize that there is no time in your life where you might hit pitfalls or things that are hard that you can't still succeed. And I think a lot of times when we hit hard times in our life or things that are unexpected, that we might blame the outside world or have excuses for why we're not going to push forward. But this is what this podcast is all about, of really stepping back and realizing what is your potential, what are the things that make you you, and making sure that you still go forward, your dreams might look a little bit different. It might be a different path that you planned, but it is still really important to understand what your skills are. And so, in this interview with Cheryl, she really talked about her family background and really how different she was from the people in her family and their belief systems as well, but did really respect them for their belief systems and found examples in that of how to persevere, but also could step back and realize what she agreed with or didn't agree with. And one example of that was talking about her grandmother and what a hard worker she was and how she really raised the 4 kids on her own, was very self-sacrificing, but then had a very traditional point of view that men come first. And when you grow up that way, it is important that you really, decide what is your belief system or not your belief system, and where do those beliefs come from. And so sometimes belief systems come from things that we don't even realize. And it's really those moments that we self-reflect and understand what aligns with us or doesn't align with us. And so we really talked about growing up, of that she was really an introvert. She played music. She was into math and science and really enjoyed her quiet time, and what really has always had a limit on people time. And even though meeting Cheryl, like I have, she's very dynamic and extroverted, it just shows that everybody isn't always as they seem with what they need. And sometimes that can surprise people. I know I'm very similar, that I, can get on stage and speak and have a lot of energy, and I may create energy with groups of people, but it is more important for me to have deeper relationships with a couple of people than be in big groups of people. Sometimes that draws my energy away. And it's important to realize that, because some people might be surprised by that when you see people that are extroverted and don't realize that they actually do need that downtime, that silent time to refuel. And she talked about the miracle morning that she does every day for 30 to 45 minutes for the last 10 years. And it's really all about getting silent, writing down your affirmations, visualizing it, exercising, reading, and, writing in a journal. And sometimes when we write, we don't even realize what's inside of us or what we may need until we actually allow that to pour out of us in silence. And if we don't give ourselves time to do that, a lot of times we aren't deciphering our emotions, aren't understanding the energy that's in our body, and we show up in the world with what's ever going on in our body, not realizing that we are affecting other people. And so when we take those moments to really understand what is happening for us, it helps us create better energy with everybody. And so she really pushed through, persevered, having a child and finding a career through that, and doing it in maybe a different type of way, where she actually found mentors along the way because she was such a hard worker, had a positive attitude. People really took her under their wing, and she was promoted very fast and into supervisor positions and so forth, and kept learning and learning and learning. And I think that's also a part that I see for people too, is that sometimes we get wrapped up in who we think we are or what our titles are and so forth, rather than realizing that sometimes we have to roll up our sleeves and just learn a role, learn what it is that we want to be, and learn the process behind what we want to be. And so we've got to do the work in order to understand what that would be to lead it. And so for her, she really, grew up in this housing industry and got her real estate license. But through being part of the business, she saw gaps in how the business was run, and she really wanted to help with operations. And that was when, the people that she has encountered in her life, that they really said to her, we need you in operating positions. We need you to fill in these gaps because you are someone that can make this happen. But you've got to demonstrate it. You've got to look for where those opportunities are. And that's really what she did. And so through that, she met her husband. They were leading the real estate company together. But, even that, after many years, they split apart. She just kept growing what she was doing, and also ended up in another relationship that became her next husband. But, and they grew that business together. But that just shows that, as we go through these pitfalls in our life that are hard, if you've never been through divorce, one of those things are that you kind of have to have gone through it to really truly understand what it feels like. And it really is a grieving process, even when you're trying to keep everything together and move on and run a business like she was running a business. And so being able to keep that presence of mind and separate emotion for when you need to deal with emotion, and being part of the business and making sure the business doesn't suffer when you're going through down times, because we will have them. There's no steady state in life, that there are things that happen along the way that we have to shift and change. And so one of the things that we talked about was, how do we go about making sure we get that joy outside of work? And, our calendars can get so jam-packed with things that we need to do. And by the things that we do outside of work, it helps us to set boundaries in our calendar. She volunteers with her church. She also helps with her grandchildren. And so in order to do that, it is important to understand, what time do you turn off? And how do you communicate that to everyone to make sure that they understand that you're not ignoring them, that it is part of your life. And, when you create boundaries, people respect your boundaries, and you'll respect theirs as well. And so one of the biggest takeaways for her is making sure that you really take the time to reflect on who is important in your life, and making sure that they know that you appreciate them, whether that's at work, whether that's your family members, that's your friends, but making sure that you spread that kindness and allowing people to know you appreciate them. Sometimes we think people know, but we don't actually say it. And just taking that moment to say it can go so far. So all of this is just so important, because we want to know that we have a positive influence, that we are creating the energy that we want in our life, but also in the people around us. And so coming up, in April, hopefully you will follow my book launch called Disconnected Connect, Tap into the Power Within You to Create the Life You Desire. And it's all about this stuff. It's really the steps and actionable tools that you can take in your life to really decipher what your beliefs are versus what might be generationally in there. And I will be doing a series of podcasts around the book once it launches, so that we can have a virtual book club and really discuss it together as well. So I'm so excited to share it. I will keep passing along information as the pre-sales go up for this book, so that you can make sure to get your copy of it as soon as it comes out. So I want to thank you for being a part of this podcast and supporting the work that we do at the B3 Method Institute. And definitely look this year, we have mindfulness courses that we are running to help you in incorporating this kind of, philosophy into your day. Our first one is finding balance, and we will meet once a week to set intentions and do meditations. And also there'll be e-learning content. It will take you about 30 minutes a week to be able to do this, and it will start setting that boundary so that you do take time for yourself to create better energy for you and those around you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.